Well, it's kind of like
He's
suicide by
shooting with
that
a guy's
point
hand.
because you
Yeah,
can't
the
just stay
guys
in the
whose
road for
hands were
forever.
having
So
to
he's
come off
laying in
now.
front of my
I'm not-
goddamn
I'm
car
not-
when I say I'm going to run over you
not-
if you don't get out of the fucking way.
No, that's not
Wait,
suicide.
when
That's
do I-
Suicide by
wait,
climate
wait.
change protest.
What-
You're-
Well, I'm glad you're enjoying the show. Thank you for being here. All right, let's move on to our next topic, and a topic inspired by our good friend Scott. And we do really appreciate that. It's really fucking useful. So shout out to my man Scott. In recent years, especially since the BLM protests, there has been legislation to absolve drivers who strike and injure protesters. This has received fierce backlash, but should that be the case? What if a motorist feels threatened by the protesters around them? What if they need to access critical services like a hospital and protesters won't move off the road? Should there be protections? I used the wrong there. Sorry about that. Should there be protections in these cases? Yeah, so we saw this like in Florida, where Ron DeSantis was pushing this because, of course, he was. Of course, it's exactly the thing he would do. But and GOP states where they wanted to absolve some incidences, and we saw that in the BLM protests where cars were like driving into people. But I'm wondering if there's some reasonableness to that, right? Usually conservatives should be ignored and ridiculed, but is there some reasonableness to this legislation? Because sometimes, yeah, you have to get through. I've seen examples of that as well, where it's like critical that you get through, but you can't because this protest is happening in front of you. And if you drive through a highly populated area of people on the street, someone's going to get hit. All right, so let's go to our friend Lactwit starts off.
Yeah, so I'm gonna be very careful.
Yo, war bonds, let's go.
The New World Order will come after you and ban you if you say the wrong opinion. So
War bonds don't need to be $20, though, boys. You can be $1. It's okay.
Force always requires a level of reasonability, and every situation ultimately is going to be a case-by-case situation, even in the presence of statutes, right? Even with castle doctrine, right? It might change presumptions, but it's still a case-by-case basis. And even if someone breaks in your home, there's still situations in which your self-defense could not be self-defense, and you actually could be going too far or breaking the law. One example I can think of is if an old lady is taking a little bit too long to cross the road. I don't think that this is a reasonable threat to justify plowing into her and throwing her off your hood and
She could be
killing her, right?
packing. Don't know.
Yeah. I mean, this is not reasonable, right? It's not. There's not a credible threat there.
Maybe not to you.
However, crowds gathering around your car, especially BLM rider crowds, which have consistently demonstrated
They're
that they
full
will
of black
attack.
people. Go ahead. Sorry.
They will attack. Well, oftentimes it's white Antifa members
I'm
who will
sorry.
violently attack vehicles, will destroy taillights, will destroy windows, will pull people out of the car, will beat them senseless. We have a lot of examples of this happening. This is obviously a threat. And anybody who perceives this threat when they have a crowd gathering around their vehicle, in my opinion, I think that should be taken into consideration. That reasonable threat perception should be taken into consideration when doing that case-by-case reasonable self-defense analysis. I would think this is also true for vehicles if they're being blocked, if their occupants are having a medical emergency, having a heart attack, giving pregnancy, et cetera, et cetera. I think this also is true for people on the highway who maybe don't feel as though they can stop in time, right? We're taught driving that if you're driving down the road and like a squirrel's running across the road, it's actually more dangerous to stop than it is to keep going, right? Because stopping suddenly on the highway carries a lot of risk. And so if you don't feel like you can stop in time, that should also be taken into consideration. People who genuinely feel a threat should not be punished for defending themselves and their property from said threat. And I do think this should be spelled out in the statutes. The standards for self-defense should be more explicit, with a lot more explicit examples being put into the statutes, right? I'll be honest with you, I bring this up a lot, but I'm going to bring it up again. The whole fact that we had a trial over Kyle Rittenhouse, I think, shows that the statutes on self-defense were insufficient, right? You took like the most clear-cut case and people were arguing about it, right? And like this needs to be much more explicit than it is. And I think for people blocking highways, I think there's way more examples than people realize how this can be self-defense when people do run over protesters. And at the end of the day, don't block highways. It's a really bad idea.
Thank you so much. And sorry, I was trolling you during your opening.
You're
I
good.
should-
You're good.
Let's go, Scott.
Man, you miss a couple of fucking prime guys, and all of a sudden Lactoid needs to carry on the torch of super long intros, right? I love you. It's okay. Yeah, so I brought this up because I was permanently banned from Twitter for having this conversation. For saying I believe that it's morally justified to run over protesters that block the road. Right? That was basically the argument. And then of course I, was in the thread arguing with other people that like, no, you shouldn't plow through them at full speed. Like you should try and go through slowly. Of course, I got mass reported and celebrated by a bunch of pro-Ukraine war people that were mad that I was calling for peace, which is ironic for violating the violent speech rules. But nevertheless, I think this is a conversation that's worthy of having for a lot of reasons. I agree with most everything that Lactoid said, right? Might have like a thing here or there. But I think also it should be known that there is this bullshit idea that someone is a peaceful protester in situations where they are absolutely not a peaceful protester. It's kind of funny because you shared an article from 2021, New York Times, and they were still on that hilarious rag that it was mostly peaceful protests. They were like, the protests were 96% peaceful. Only 4% of the protests were, by our definition, violent as fuck, which is just hilarious. But nevertheless, like when you block a roadway, which is like a climate change activists are currently doing fully and completely, and you stop people's freedom of movement and they're incapable of backing up and going another route because there's traffic behind them, you are a violent protester. I don't care that you're saying peace and sitting in the road. You are kidnapping people. You are imposing your body and stopping them from being able to freely move in a place that they were once able to freely move. And now they are forced to either attack you or they are forced to be your kidnap victim, right? And so I do not agree that it is per se moral to slam the gas as hard as you can and try and take out as many kneecaps as you go along. But you have every fucking right, even if they are, quote, peaceful, which is a lie, to slowly start accelerating and go faster and faster until they get the fuck out of the road. And if they get injured, that is their aggressive act. It is self-defense to run over protesters who are standing in the middle of the road because you are a victim of kidnapping. Fuck those people. They are not peaceful protesters. They are violent protesters. And also everything Lactoid said.
Thanks so much. Let's go to our friend Bam.
Yeah, I don't think you would need to legislate a specific law related to protesters in streets with cars. I feel like you're just asking for people to do the thing where you hit protesters at full speed. Now, like I said, in these situations, if someone's blocking the road, I don't think you have necessarily an obligation to turn around. Like I said, if you did want to it's still a car. If you wanted to slowly go through the crowd and people end up getting bumped by the car, like I don't think that that's something that someone can reasonably press charges for. If they're laying their bodies across the lane, I don't think you can decide that like, well, it is my right. Like they technically aren't supposed to be here, so if I can run over them, yeah, I think this is a case. This is something that we already reasonably know how the rules work, and you'll know it when you see it. If they were standing in the crowd, like you can bump them, but no, you can't do something that you know has a high likelihood of causing like grave bodily injury or like killing them. For that, and then that would be true. It's not just because of the car. It would be true if someone was like, I don't know, standing outside of a building, like, and you're like, oh, I always eat at this picnic table, so I'm just gonna move you until I can get to this picnic table. Like, I don't think you have a right to do these things. Like, you know it when you see it.
Thank you. Let's go to LSP. So you can stop fucking complaining. Go ahead.
Yeah, maybe you ran a good fucking panel. So, I have the I'm like the guy from that Norman Rockwell meme who stands up and says, I don't think you should run over people protesting in the streets. And apparently that's like a bold and controversial statement.
Ooh. Courageous.
I know. I think and I believe in like free speech rights like a fucking pussy. No, I mean, I get it. Like, if there's somewhere you got to be, like, if I'm driving and I got to get my woman to a hospital because she's in labor and my woman's life is on the line, my kid's life is on the line. You're in front of me, you're becoming a pancake, right? I get that, right? But I don't think the prompt here is talking about these kinds of scenarios. I feel like when we're saying like we want to visit violence on protesters who are obstructing traffic, we're saying anybody for any reason. If they're obstructing traffic, I don't care if I got my dog in the back seat and he's just perfectly fine and wants to all have a good laugh. Like, you guys seem to be perfectly fine with just hurting people who are exercising their rights. I don't agree with this framing that it's a form of kidnapping. You're not being kidnapped. You're being obstructed. That's the worst that's happening. You're being obstructed from going from point A to point B. But this is a public road, right? Other people have rights to that road, and they're choosing to use this road for the purposes of staging a protest. Now, is it annoying? Is it inconvenient? Is it even illegal? Yeah, it could be all of those things. It's not your place to solve it, right? Right? You direct that matter to the police, because what's going to happen is if you go down this road of normalizing violence against protesters, you're going to get protesters that hit back. Right. So, like, if you get this idiot idea, I should just be able to run over protesters when they're in the street. Don't be surprised when your happy ass gets shot because the protesters show up armed, which is a thing that happens. We do have people showing up armed at protests. And I don't think this is a very good way to conduct protests in the future, is where we're in a hot and tense situation where people have to be armed to the fucking teeth because some crazy person who's being obstructed is going to run them over with their car. I don't think that's a reasonable way to conduct society. Further than that, the legislation being proposed, which was actually what the prompt was, this would be a massive extension of state power to reduce First Amendment rights for people. It would be saying we should give more power to the state to penalize people for exercising their First Amendment rights. I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that at all. And I'm kind of like weirded out that like all these freedom-loving conservatives on the panel are like the opposite of me.
Okay, thank you so much. Let's go to our friend FK.
Yeah. Yeah, it feels weird because like what I'm seeing right now is a lot of people really happy that we're creating these rules that are just like, hey, you can clear a roadway if you feel like you need to clear this roadway, which is okay. But when those trucker protests happens, if somebody wants to make a killdozer and like clear out those trucks because it's like diminishing their life in some way, right? And like kill the people in that roadway, even if it's just they're going slow, move out of the way, right? Then you should be fine with that. The way I see it is if there's like some circumstances, those can go to court. We can decide amongst a jury and a trial on like, hey, was this a reasonable action that this person ran over those people? Anything otherwise, you're just trying to say, hey, I don't like what these people are protesting about right now, and I think you should be allowed to kill these protesters. I feel like that's all these laws are doing. We already have procedures in place for if you kill people. If you want to start saying like you're allowed to kill people now for protesting, you can try to make that argument, but it feels weird. It feels like I agree with LSP. It feels like you're just going against the First Amendment.
And finally, our friend Corey.
Yeah, well, first, average FK, I appreciate the Canadian example with the trucker protests.
Yeah.
Super great. And like, yeah, as usual, I have like mixed feelings of like, so like to the example, like kind of like one of the best examples that at least I can think of, but maybe due to lack of creativity, of like, I can peacefully protest with enough people, and I just start like a human chain, and I just encircle another person, and they're just now surrounded entirely by people. Like, yeah, technically, I guess it's peaceful in some aspects, but then they're pretty much immobile unless they want to physically, move a person around. And so I don't know what the solution is. I don't think even just like gradually speeding up with your car is the solution. Yeah, ideally it would be handled by the police, but I think there are clear delays and issues with just like offloading it to the police. And I'm not necessarily in favor of it increasing their power per se. Where it's like, yeah, I don't really know where the line is. But to Lactoid's point, if there's some ambiguity in the law, and that results in, let's say, pretty much ambiguous situations playing out, then like, yeah, there should be greater clarity in the law, if in fact it's ambiguous. But so far, based off my cursory reading of the First Amendment, which can totally be flawed and incomplete, which I will fully grant, it does seem like there is some right to peacefully protest, and that, yeah, my limit is not running people over with their cars, but I'm open to having my position changed, and I'll leave it there for now.
You should be able to.
I love.
Like, move.
I just love that Corey was the only one honest here.
Okay, I don't know what that means. I think you have
it means
to,
we're all lying, but Corey.
Like I said, like reasonably, you saying that like you shouldn't be able to move your car at all. Like you shouldn't be able to slow back. Like if imagine you're at this is like a real life situation that happens. Imagine someone's like holding a parking spot at a game, and they're like standing in the parking spot, and they're like, "Oh, my friends will be here in like 20 minutes." If you like pull your car into the parking lot, like they'll eventually get out the way. Like I'm fine with like slowly pulling, like continuing your vehicle moving forward. Just because it's a car, like we don't have to call the police every single time. Like we can handle these situations. But it's the concept of like being prepared to like murder over this thing that's like making a conscious
Yeah.
decision.
Yeah, so I made it. I feel like I tried to make it clear. Maybe I didn't make it clear. But like the example of where one is necessarily kidnapped and justified in being able to run over protesters is an inability to go backwards, right? Which is that if you're on a road by yourself and then you find a blockade and you can do a U-turn and go to a different road, right? I don't think you're justified in plowing through that place because you're not being actually kidnapped, right? Like they're disrupting services and causing economic damage, which harms people in their lives and their jobs, regardless of this idea that like the individual needs to have like a pregnant woman giving birth. Like, no, disrupting economic activity in people's day-to-day lives, especially when you're doing to thousands, tens of thousands, potentially millions of people, depending on the roadway, is already doing massive amounts of harm. But I'm talking about specifically when you can't go anywhere, right? So it's like I'm not. If you have the capacity to do a U-turn, just like with the parking lot, right? I'm holding this parking space for my friend. Well, you can go find another fucking parking space, right? You don't have to plow that person over just because you want that fucking parking space. But if that person is sitting in front of the wheels of your vehicle and there's a bunch of cars behind you and they're saying, you're not going anywhere until climate change is solved. Fuck you. You don't get to kidnap me. And it's so the analogy of this idea of like, you're not being kidnapped, you're being obstructed. It's like LSP, like if I go to your house and I board up your house and I put nails and boards on your house and your windows.
That would still not be kidnapping. That would still be
So
obstructing.
should you be allowed to clear the obstruction?
You don't get to go anywhere.
In the case of the Canada protests, if you want to clear out those
in the
obstructions.
truckers protest.
Yeah.
So again, like I said, if they bring Killdozer, right, and they say get out of the fucking road, and then the truckers say fuck you, we're not getting out of the road, then eventually, yeah, Killdoze the Canadian truckers that are all on my side in terms of vaccine mandates because you're blocking the fucking roadway. I'm all fucking for it. But there's a certain escalation.
So odd.
Well, would you be fine with shooting instead? Like if there's a crowd and they're obstructing me, I can't go forward and I can't go back. I didn't want to damage my car. Would it be fine if I shot them instead?
So when you say a crowd, right? The problem with the idea of a crowd is it's very different than the person intentionally laying in front of your vehicle. That person is actively trying to kidnap you. But
sure,
if there's a crowd of people,
shoot whoever's in front of my vehicle, right? Would that be fine?
I mean, it's not the best way to do it, but if it's effective and you pull out a gun and say, get the fuck away from my car, and then they refuse, yeah, pop a few shots off and then drag their fucking corpse out of the goddamn road.
LSP, I want to test you for a few questions.
Test away, baby. I love you.
Yeah, so I guess two questions. The first one is somewhat like not really related, but the second one is. If let's say you walk into a closet and then I quickly come behind you and slam the door, how long do I get, and you have a gun in there, how long do I get to hold this door until you're going to shoot the door and kill me? Because I'm just obstructing you, right? I'm not actually like holding
He's not
you down.
kidnapping. It's just obstructing.
Yeah, I'm just obstructing you from
It's
getting out of
okay.
the closet.
It's peaceful.
So,
It's actually a peaceful protest.
So if I sit there like obstructing you for like, let's say it's going on like 2 weeks now, like at what point do you shoot?
That's my human chain example. I just gather enough people and circle you.
That's why I said,
That
Corey,
was-
you
that
were
was
honest
gonna be
about it
the
because
second
you were understanding the
example, right?
situation.
This is actually a good question. I might say within the day that would be fine, but I would stress that a difference with a car is you can get the fuck out and walk.
What if you're a diabetic?
I
You
think-
need
Right?
insulin.
If I'm in, well, then fucking shoot, right?
Wait,
now it's murder.
what if the crowd surrounding your car to like, they're not like, you don't really feel safe getting out of your car, and they're just
If they're
not moving.
threatening you, then your life's in danger. Shoot.
No threatening.
like-
they're not threatening. They're just like all they're all holding hands.
I don't think
they're in a
if they're
circle
not
around your
threatening, then
car.
I wouldn't say you can't shoot. No.
But let's say they're close enough to the car that you can't open your car doors and you can't drive forward. Like, so like, how long do they stand there like surrounding your car until you just hit the gas?
Like I said, let's take it to court. Like eventually, you
Wait.
get a situation where you do something, and then
Yeah.
you go fight it in court.
Yeah,
Like, don't think we
I
have
feel
to-
like
How are you
But
gonna
so
get
you're
to court?
creating this
I
law
feel
in the
like in
first
this
place.
situation,
Wait,
like
creating
my
this
kid
law in the
is
first
just
place.
relying on. Well, there's
Creating
an
this law in the
X factor
first
here.
place
There's
is just
law
attacking
enforcement.
protest. All
Yeah.
you're
Oh,
by
well,
making
of
these
course, because
laws.
the law
Wait,
enforcement does a lot of
no,
it.
wait.
Okay.
By making these laws, all you're saying
Oh.
is we don't want people to protest in certain ways. We already had an understanding that hey, if a protest is
you're
going on and some
equivocating.
crazy shit goes down,
I
we
feel like
have to
Rosa
make a
Parks
judgment
might
on
got a
like
bullet.
was this allowed or not,
Like
right?
Toys World.
You're
But, like,
equivocating.
I feel
You're
like now all
no,
you're saying
lying.
is just like, oh, I don't like these certain protests going on, and I want there
No.
to be laws because like certain people should be
No.
allowed to kill on these protests.
You're lying. You're equivocating. You're equivocating and trying to act like protest is one fucking category. As if standing in front of a fucking building and not blocking anybody's ways with signs and being loud and vocal is the same thing as stopping people from getting to work,
But you
stopping
have the
ambulances
right
from working,
to do that.
stopping
You
the,
can
the,
shut
the economy
down.
to move.
That's
you
what a
ever heard
protest
crossing
is.
a
It's people
picket
stopping
line?
shit.
Yeah.
It's people trying to make a problem to like get some attention to a bigger issue that they're dealing with, right?
You know
So,
how,
so,
like, you
so
hear
is
about
burning
scabs
down a
crossing the
Target just a
line?
protest? How
Okay,
dare you?
I
How
think
dare you
that's
stop
like-
us from burning
I
down a
don't-
Target?
Am I arguing to
Okay,
burn down a
what's your-
Target, or
what's
am I
your
arguing for
closet
motherfuckers
answer?
just walking?
What's your answer to the closet?
No,
question?
you're
Like,
Wait,
you're
what's the
lying.
question?
You're not arguing for
Are
just
you
walking.
going to keep you in the
Yeah,
closet
yeah.
before
So like, so you walk into the closet. I come behind you, slam
Yeah.
the door. How long do I have to hold the door before you shoot me?
And I have no way of getting like help.
Yeah,
I can't
you
call
have
the
no
cops.
way of
I
getting
can't do
out.
anything.
Okay, I am blocking the door, and you have a gun in there, and you could shoot me and like get out. But I'm just obstructing.
I feel like it's one thing to imprison me personally in one room, and it's one thing to just be like, this road isn't going to be working anymore because we're deciding to have an issue with this road.
Okay,
government
but no,
official down the road?
but you can't. But the
You're right. It's
situation-
worse. You're kidnapping more people.
The situation's identical.
No,
because
are you
you're
kidnapping somebody?
Obstructing somebody from leaving. That's the point of the hypothetical.
As soon as
okay?
you,
You can't get out.
As soon as you reasonably believe that they're like putting your life at risk.
Okay, well, hold on. You're just like locked in the closet.
I'm saying, if
Let's
they
say it's a
don't
pantry.
anything-
Let's say it's a pantry, and so you have enough food in there to live. You've got a bucket you can shit in. You're gonna live for like the next like year, just alone.
Wait, but
in the
again, this
pantry.
this
How
isn't
long do I get to
equivalent.
keep the
This
door
isn't
closed
equivalent.
until you
This
shoot me?
isn't equivalent. You're talking about an issue where it's like you're one individual locking one individual away versus like a group of people being like, we have an issue and practicing their First Amendment right to protest, and then they're
I'm
blocking a road
practicing
while
my
they're
First
protesting.
Amendment. I've got my First Amendment speech is to
Wait, your
like,
First
stand in
Amendment
front of the
speech
door.
isn't
Yeah.
to no, that's not though.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, blocking
Wait, is that a
access
First
not
Am- wait,
Amendment speech?
where do
yeah,
they
you're,
rule that
you're
that-
an energy CEO.
Wait,
right?
where
He's
have
a
they
private
where have they done
protester.
that?
He's
Where in
speaking
the
to a
past
side.
have they done that? Where in the
Wait,
past have
until
they
you
done that?
reasonably
Where they
believe
just
you've been
block someone?
kidnapped, Maybe
Wait,
you're not
wait,
gonna
wait.
stop.
What if you're driving in
Do
a
you
car?
reasonably believe you've been kidnapped?
Yeah,
And, like,
like I said, it's not. There's not. Like,
When do you
know it when
reasonably believe you've been kidnapped?
Yeah.
Are they
you
pro?
know it-
Wait, then are
yeah,
they?
you know it when you see it. Like you're gonna have to go argue that. Like if I reasonably
Fair
be like,
enough,
hey,
fair
let
enough.
me out of here. Like
Yeah.
and like if you believe like, oh, okay, I'm being kidnapped at this point. Then at that point you could like you
Right.
shoot through the door and you're gonna have to like prove that.
Right, and so Scott believes that if you're,
I'm
if
gonna
you're
go.
sitting
I'm gonna
behind,
go
like,
to
a
the
line-
extreme. I'm gonna go to the extreme because there seems to be this idea that we're slipping in that it's somehow okay if the person's life is not in danger to stop them from leaving, but you're saying, well, you can get out of your car, so you can abandon your vehicle to the mob, and you can just walk wherever you go. Just quit your fucking job because you're not
Yeah, I don't
going to
think
work
that's
that day or whatever fucking problems you have. You just have to abandon your vehicle now. So what? So there's two things to this. Number one, attacks on people's property. Yeah, fuck you. You get to defend your property. Get the fuck off my yard. Doesn't mean, well, they're just pissing on my yard and spray painting
but
my
it's
yard.
not your
and
road.
spray painting
the
my
road's
house.
not your property,
The
Scott.
car
If
is
they're
it's my
attacking,
car.
if they're
They
attacking,
attack
wait,
your car,
Lactoid,
go
I could see the
nuts.
argument if
But
they're
if they're
attacking
on
your
the
car, you
road,
can make that
don't go
argument. But if
nuts.
they're standing in the road, they're not attacking your car.
Like call 911. and,
They're
like, ask
they're
for every
making
single
it
person to be arrested.
impossible for me to use my property. They're making it impossible for me
It's
to
their-
leave in a functional way.
It's-
I'm
no,
abandoned
that's
in
a
the middle
different
of a
thing, 'cause
fucking
it's a shared
city
property.
protest as a white dude. So like just an example, since we're using BLM, since that's the article that was used, I remember like when my mother was downtown in the BLM protests and she had to come live with us because she was being threatened so many times for being white by armed people saying, fuck you, this is our neighborhood now. Right. So I'm a stranded person of the wrong skin color in a mostly peaceful protest, which, oh, by the way, just happens to be, billions of dollars of damage and threats and violence and people dying.
When an accident,
right?
an accident happens and shuts down a highway, people get in trouble for trying to cross around cars and trying to cut that traffic, right? A cop might pull them over if they see them doing dumb shit. But we're gonna be okay with protesters because a road is shut down, getting run over.
And it's also like we're
what? Hold on, no. Hold on,
we punish people for trying to skip past an accident.
Is your argument?
We punish people for trying to skip past traffic in an accident, and we're like, hey, listen, it might suck, you might waste your time, maybe you're not going to get to work on time, but it is what it is. When it comes to like a protest, you're just saying like we can run them over now.
No,
because your time's being wasted.
So this is a completely fundamentally different thing, because one is an individual that is correcting an issue so that traffic may flow through an area, and you are being temporarily
Why
held.
should I be punished for wanting to go quicker? If I want to cut past them at 70 miles an hour, even though there's a cop and some EMS crew right there, why should I be punished? I should just be allowed to skip right past them as fast as I want.
Because this is an individual that is clearing the roadway, right? So there's
their problem. I pay for that road too. I should be allowed to use it how I want to use it.
There is an unintended, right, obstruction in the road that they are clearing up so that traffic may flow. This is fundamentally different than people who have no job affiliation, no expertise or anything, or have anything to do with the roads, laying in front of your vehicle and saying you don't get to move.
You're also actually legally obligated, like even if the lane isn't obstructed, if someone's like on the side of the road, technically you can be pulled over for not moving over a lane. You're not supposed to use like the lane closest to them if you have the option to.
I thought I owned that road. Am I not allowed to use it?
It
how
depends
I
on
want
the
to use it
depends on the
individually?
state.
I
thought I could
just
state property.
all the lanes
State-
are pulled up.
Yeah, state property comes with fucking stupid laws and contradictions, right? But that doesn't mean that there isn't a difference between kidnapping and individuals that are doing their best to clear a roadway so that people can
dealing
move.
with your hypothetical.
Let's let in Corey, because Corey hasn't had a chance to speak at all.
Well, I mean, something was playing out. I don't know, but I'll try to keep it short with my hypothetical, just to engage with Bam, because I want to understand your position better. Because it seems like some of your position aligns with Scott. Of like, I think you mentioned earlier, of like, you should have the right to like slowly accelerate your car, and if they don't get out of the way, well, that's on you.
Well, no, not to the point of like if you reasonably expect that like, okay, doing this action is going to kill them. So, for example, if they were like tied in, if they were like holding hands in a human chain laid across the road, then at that point, like the reasonable expectation, if I slowly accelerate, I'm gonna like crush their body. Like versus like if they're like standing in a crowd, like you can like a car's gonna like eventually move people out of the way. That's just because that's how cars work. That wouldn't be reasonable.
Yeah, but like
what?
Why is one reasonable and the other isn't reasonable? Because in both situations they have every opportunity to move. They're consenting. If you say that it's justified, if you're saying it's justified to slowly speed up your vehicle until you strike the individual that's in front of you, right? Then if we assume that as axiomatically true, because you're saying it is true to do that under certain circumstances, right? Mm-hmm. If we assume that you can slowly move your vehicle, right? Then the position that they are in as you slowly approach their vehicle is what they're consenting to. They are consenting that you run over them as opposed to just nudge them aside. No, if you're saying it's justified to nudge people aside with your vehicle, then it's equally justified to run them over.
No, it's not. That's not going to hold up anywhere because there's going to be none of these things are going to deal with like hard rules. We're going to go through an idea of what do we consider to be reasonable. So even like Corey example and then
you can't just claim it's not reasonable.
Like if once you're like holding, like if everyone's around the car and they're saying we're not letting you move. Like you're not allowed to move backwards or forwards. Now you're in a different situation again. Like you're gonna be able to argue that like, oh, okay, like I did feel like I was in a hostage situation. Like I was a hostage here.
Yeah, and it would be on
that in court.
Yeah, and it would be on them to
argue
that they weren't trying to imprison you, right?
Yeah,
which they can make that argument.
They're just gonna tell you to turn around.
But you're not actually dealing with the argument.
Yeah, so I'm gonna try to actually help you out, Scott. Even though I don't align with your position. But it seems like, okay, at least to understand your position better, of like, if a group of protesters are just like standing there in a line, you seem to be okay with a car just slowly nudging forward. Is that correct?
Because
Yeah.
a normal person wouldn't have a reasonable expectation that this is gonna like kill them.
Okay, sure. So it seems like if I hold the position of the people the same, and I change it to a steamroller, is that still okay? They can still gradually move forward.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
I don't think it's gonna because it's not gonna reasonably.
It's gonna fucking kill him.
A
The steamroller's gonna fucking kill him,
Oh,
no matter
you're
what
talking about-
position.
Damn, look
I was
at my
thinking of a
picture, my
train.
background.
I
That
was
thing.
thinking of that thing. What? I guess
They
you
can get
drive
out of
this
the
on
way.
road.
They can move out of the way in both situations. The only principal difference is the position they
Yeah, if
choose
they're
to get
laying
run
down,
over
yeah.
in.
No, yeah.
I mean, like,
honestly,
look, dude,
I was still.
you could nudge someone and break their femur, and this could nick their femoral
because I
artery,
know
and they
how
could immediately
steamrollers
bleed
work.
the fuck
Any
out
person
on the
can,
road,
like,
right? Like,
rolled into them.
there's a potentiality that they die no matter what way they're standing if you strike them with the vehicle. Like, it's a lot less likely. But the fact of the matter is that they're choosing to get hit by you. They made the choice that they refuse to move as you accelerate.
But
Bam,
it's also
wait, Bam.
If-
What about a
if there
wood
is a
chipper?
protester
I put a
in front of
wood
me-
chipper in front, as slowly moving in. Would
No,
that
I
be
think
okay?
that I think at that point you're probably dealing with something that's unreasonable. But like, but that's obvious. The thing is, like, we can figure this out.
But
in
you
court.
just
I think
keep
the
saying
whatever.
it's obvious
Like,
and keep using the
passing it
term
around.
reasonable.
Well, no,
and the only thing you're
danger's
applying,
even more.
no,
apparent,
listen.
right?
The only
Yeah, I agree
only
with
thing that you're appealing to is your opinion about what you think is reasonable, and then you just keep
And
calling
the
it
court will
reasonable.
fight- it will
But
prove
like,
it.
you're not right. Well, then you basically say, well, here's my opinion, but it doesn't really matter because everyone has their own subjective opinion. Let the courts decide.
No,
Is it
I'm
really
saying
much
that-
of an opinion?
let the courts decide his legitimate position. Like, because we're
But the court
arguing that
decides the right position.
Yeah, because we're arguing now that we need a more. You're arguing we need a more explicit rule on when we can do this. We need to make a law specifically related to this niche event.
I never
saying
made that
like,
argument.
No, well, I mean
That's Lactoid's argument.
Okay, well, yeah, like that's Lactoid, and we need a very specific to deal with this specific situation. Like, we need to be more explicit. But I'm saying that the laws that they currently exist seem to do a good job of differentiating what's considered reasonable and not reasonable.
Well, not according to the people in Florida. They wanted a more explicit rule.
Yes, because they don't like these protests.
No, there's
I wanna
there's
ask-
a lot of situations in which like any reasonable person would like look at it and be like, this is ridiculous that like this person's being charged. Like it. this is
Right, but
clearly
let's make an
self-defense, right?
unreasonable one, right? Let's just say Lactoid Scott. I'm curious on your take. Like, if I'm driving and there's cars behind me, so I can't reverse. There's no getting out.
Mhm.
Right, and there's protesters in front of me. Now they're not threatening me, but they won't move. If I run them over and they die, are y'all in the position I should face no charges?
Yes.
I'm
Honk,
going to the
honk,
store to
move
buy a
slowly.
fucking bag of hot Cheetos, dog.
If-
Like,
I don't
So-
give a
so-
fuck
wait,
what it
Scott,
is that
there's
you're
a
doing.
Second
You said
Amendment if there's a
Scott,
Second
can I
Amendment
clarify? Wait,
protest
quick,
happen.
Scott.
Oh, yeah,
hold
go
on,
ahead,
quick,
go ahead.
quick, Scott. So when you're talking like move slowly, okay, because maybe even LSP will agree with this, maybe not. So let's say you're behind some like stop oil protesters or whatever, and they're blocking the road, and you're slowly inching forward, and then like you inch between two of the protesters, and instead of like they're being pushed out of the way, but instead of being pushed out, instead of being pushed out of the way, they like jump down in front of the car. LSP, like, do I all of a sudden, because isn't this like a perverse
once
incentive?
they jump in front of the car, like the how do I phrase this? The
If they're putting themselves in
person
danger by
performing-
throwing themselves into the vehicle, that's one
Yes.
thing. But if they're already
Thank you.
lined up and they're there and you're starting to try to push them out and trying to run over them, that's a different thing.
Well, but isn't this like a perverse incentive
So-
because you're actually discouraging people from getting out of the way at that point?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I-
And
I
on top
feel
of that,
myself-
you're
get
encouraging
it
you're
in court.
encouraging the protesters.
Well, you want to encourage protests. You want to live in a state where protests are encouraged and where police are encouraged to respond
Not
if any
this
laws are
kind.
being broken. In
That
this
is
case, yes, you
fucking
do, because the
retarded.
Alternative.
Why
I'm sorry, dog,
in
your
what
position
fucking
is I should be able to run
retard
people over and get
lala?
away with it. You don't
Your-
have no
your
position to
position-
call anybody retard.
Your
No.
your position is that you want to encourage people to shut down all economic activity in your state, and that's a good thing. Fuck off!
Everything
Get
is-
out of the
wait a
road.
minute.
Should be
The other
able
thing
to
is we're
make-
pretending that there's
Yes,
no other
people should be
option.
able to
There's also
protest
like when you call
and
police.
make economic harm and pain happen. And in response to
Oh.
that, it should stress the state to make changes. That's what protests
Well,
are for.
the other change
wait,
that's
wait,
being
I have one
the
more
other
question
change I
for
feel like
LSP.
you, Scott, and the other change I feel like Scott and Lactoid are asking for is just having certain areas that can't be protested in. I guess Is that what you would want? Like, would you be like, you can't protest near a hospital because that's like a service that's happening. You can't protest probably near like
Well, you can
roads because
protest,
there's
you
like
just
those
can't,
are
like,
being
block-
used.
Can I protest
Yeah,
in front of a movie theater?
You can't like
It can
block
only
traffic. You
be
can't
so
block
inconvenient.
traffic, right?
Yeah.
You can be like on the side,
Like, you
like,
can-
with your signs, and yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, you can protest at the hospital, but when the doctor's trying to get into the fucking hospital because he's a heart surgeon and needs to do heart surgery, you need to get the fuck out of the way.
Then why
The
wouldn't you
point- the
fight?
point-
Then why wouldn't you fight to set up rules like that? Why it feels, or not you guys, but like because you guys aren't making these rules, but it feels odd that the rules that are being set
Right.
up aren't like these are sections that we're gonna like have protected because it's like dangerous for people to protest there, and instead they're like, listen, you can run over people if you need to.
Because that's what the state always does, is either create broad categories that have tons of stupid loopholes or centrally plan specific things that get them votes that have unintended consequences. I'm a fucking anarchist. I don't give a fuck Ron
Just throwing
DeSantis,
this out there,
the
point of
the fucking propaganda lawyer for Guantanamo Bay does. Like, I don't, you know what I mean? Like, they're not my rules.
I have another test real quick. LSP. I'm
please
sure
stop
you were
testing me.
I got more tests.
You
I'm
said bring
sure,
it on earlier.
Yeah, you did. You did. Much
All right,
to
go.
much to your detriment. If
Go
you,
for it.
it's well known that there's protests in which people will glue themselves to like the road or like the chairs and everything. If you have a bunch of protesters who like glue themselves to the road, let's say they take their shirt off, and they lay down on some glue, and removing them will like remove all the skin off their back. Would you be in favor of being able to remove them from the road, or do they just like get to shut down the road forever?
No, I'd be in favor of removing them from the road.
Even if they might die.
There's already a
If-
real one of this.
Well, it's kind of like suicide
It's
by
even
that
with the guy's
point,
hand.
because you
Yeah,
can't
the
just stay
guys
in the
whose
road for
hands were
forever.
So he's
come
laying in
off
front of
now.
my goddamn car when I say I'm going to run
I'm
over you
not-
if you don't get out of the fucking way.
No, that's not
Wait,
suicide.
when
That's
do I-
Suicide by
wait,
climate
wait.
change protests.
Here, when do I get to like? How long do I have to wait
you get-
before I can
you get
rip
to-
the person off?
I don't think
the
you get to do
pavement?
it. I think
Yeah,
we
I
have
don't. That's my
professionals.
problem. I don't
The
want
cops
you to
get
do
to
it.
kill you.
I want the cops to do it. Right. I want this.
Can the
this
cops
medium-
run over protesters?
We do
Oh,
give the
no.
cops a right
I
to
think
Why would you
I
want
think
the
that I
cops
actually
to
think
run
it's
over
different. I
protesters?
think the person gets given the option. I think they either get to choose to die glued to that ground and we remove them when they're dead, or they get to choose to be removed by the like authorities.
Other protesters feed them, right? So like they're gonna live for a while.
If they get fed, they get fed, but they're going to be in that hot sun laying
We're
there
just
for however
we're
long
gonna
they're stuck.
order like a big,
That would
like
be a
100
base
gallons of
protest.
that,
You'd have
like
to admire the balls
what you
of
call
the
it,
guy who
that
does that.
glue remover to break them down. We're just gonna pour it on them.
There's people who set themselves on fire, right? Like there are people who are genuinely like
What?
they're
I'm
willing
just
to die
actually
for this
do
shit.
get
I'm
do
very
get
curious-
solvents to like remove protesters. That's the thing they do.
I'm
Well,
very
they-
curious
The
about
recent one they weren't able to because they
hold on.
mixed like silicone and concrete. So
So
Yeah, they
so
just
so
drilled
real
up
quick,
part of the road
I'm really
around it.
I'm really interested if average just average FK, if you're actually like morally consistent or if you're just kind of like memeing. Like, do you genuinely believe that a protester gets to block a highway indefinitely if they so choose and they can't be removed without some like means
I'm
of like
fine.
damage?
I'm fine with there being some rule in place to be like, hey, listen, highways are going to be this thing we've decided you can't be blocking, right? But I don't like the rule in place being we're giving you protections for running over people. I feel like that when it comes to like killing people, I think that's something we usually leave up to like the court
So-
system, and we leave up to like, listen, if you killed someone, you got to like, we got to make an argument that you didn't have the
Okay,
right
so
to
you
kill that
disagree.
person, right?
You were memeing before. You weren't being serious or making real arguments. Okay.
No, I think as it stands right now, I'm okay with the idea of like you have this right to block this area because we haven't made these rules yet, right? We haven't made these rules of like you're not allowed to block these streets. So I
No,
think
it's
the way
fine. You
people protest are
recanted
allowed to.
your previous position so that you're no longer in contradiction. I got it. You were just
Yes.
memeing before. Yeah, you said
it
that
makes
they
you
had a
feel
right
better
to
to say
sit there forever, like and then I asked you, I was like, "You sure you believe that?"
Yeah, as
and
it
then you
stands-
said, "Well,
as
I'm
it
okay
stands right
with
now,
a
they
law
have a
to
right.
remove them."
Yeah, as it stands right
Okay,
now,
so-
they have a right to sit there forever. I don't like. Is it hard for you to
Forever.
conceptualize that? Are you like a dog that
Okay,
can't
all right.
conceptualize things
So-
that are
so-
hard?
No. It's just you keep switching back and forth because you can't figure out
Ball's over
what
there.
position you have. Yeah,
Okay,
no,
all right,
I get it. You're trying to
I think
distract me.
FK's
So
I think
if that
FK's
is the case,
I do
If
wanna
if
hear
that
from
is
our
the
friend
case,
Corey.
I'll be real quick. If that is the case, what is where are you deriving your morality from? Because I don't think you're consistent with your moral framework at all.
I think
think you're
our
just-
universe is like a really complex environment that we exist in, and I think things are made up of infinite like cause and effect like decisions, and it's like you can't really look at something and like pick one thing. You just have to look at it through one lens at a time, and hopefully, as like the more lenses you get to look through at things, you can start developing like an idea for how those things work. That's kind of how I think of things.
Okay, so you're not actually morally inconsistent because you don't have a morally consistent viewpoint. Got it.
I mean, if that's how you want to say things, okay.
Go to
If that makes you
Corey.
feel good,
Yeah, that's how I would like to
Corey.
shit on you over and over.
The
again.
Schwab's paid for me for the
Get in there, Corey.
I just have
Schwab and
hopefully-
Lenin.
exactly.
Well, maybe he was using that Lenin bus as target practice. You know?
Yeah, you ever think of that?
I don't think so.
True.
I don't know. I'm just
What
throwing
if-
it out there.
What
I'm
if you saw it
actually-
and it had like dart holes in it?
But Lactoid. So just a question to hopefully better inform myself of like, you know, again, through my cursory reading of like the First Amendment and like right freedom to assemble and right to peaceful protest.
Peacefully assemble.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. Fair enough. Well, it
Peacefully
seems like,
assemble is a big one there.
yeah, I understand. So that's and it seems like it's based off of, again, my cursory understanding. It's like appears to be reserved for like appeals to the government, as in if it's not like a protest that's like an appeal to the government, it's sort of like invalid, or like your right to peaceful protest is no longer like there. Is that fair, or am I completely like misunderstanding?
You can peacefully protest whatever you want, right?
Okay.
If whether to the government, you could peacefully protest the fact that that
Yeah,
Taco
but-
Tuesday, like that Taco Tuesday
Well,
exists.
so that's what I'm asking you. Like, so both of them are equally
Who the fuck
constitutionally
would protest
protected,
Taco Tuesday.
as in like protesting Taco Tuesday versus like, let's say, the government's inability to address climate change. Okay, I just wanted to clarify that.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Right. Yeah.
So-
If maybe you're like, it's got to be Taco Thursday. Fuck this. Yeah. If that's really important to you for some reason,
Why not
have
both?
fun. Have fun. Go out in the street. Like you can go. Like just don't block traffic. But if you're like out on the sidewalk with a sign, it's got to be Taco Thursday. Have fun.
I feel like that.
So I have a question. I have a
there's a flaw
question
there.
for the panel. Can you be forced to participate in a protest?
We're participating.
What do you mean by that?
You cut out for you.
Well, if you're protesting, right? Let's say it's 10 people, right? And they're protesting in the middle of the road, and now they block off, I don't know, like an entire LA highway. 1 million people are blocked up. All of these people are now part of a giant national protest where, millions of dollars of economic activity are lost. Grocery store food prices are going to become ever so slightly more expensive. Like people are going to be harmed in many different ways, all because these 10 people have an idea. And you are a part of that protest now, right? Like you are inexorably linked because it's just 10 people. If these 10 people stood outside of a Capitol building, everyone would laugh at them. But now they've blocked 1 million people trying to get into LA in the morning. Like, can you be forced to be a part of that protest?
Yeah, you can. If the person in front of you and behind you won't move, like if you're like, can you be forced to participate in traffic? Yeah, you can.
Okay, so
I mean, I think you're asking should, right? You're asking.
No, I'm saying saying you
so-
have to. Like if I'm stuck in traffic, I'm stuck in traffic. Like I don't like.
Yeah.
it can suck, but like
You could have your moment of a mental breakdown and run over everyone in traffic, but that's like your mental breakdown.
Okay, but you would say
like,
that
I
that was
have a right
unjust.
to constantly
that
drive
you need to go
70
to jail
miles per
for.
hour on the interstate.
But Scott, I think Scott, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think you meant should everyone be obviously can. Yes, you can physically block it, and then yes, you are stuck there. But should
Well, I mean, they're making the moral. I mean, yeah, fair enough. Should they're making the moral ought that I ought, well, the claim that I ought not run over these protesters to get them out of the way. So, does this situation change because we know that most protest activity, especially those that shut down economic activity, are like the silver spoon socialist types that don't actually have to fucking go to a job, right? People like me, except not socialist, silver spoon, but whatever. These are people that aren't necessarily economically productive. They don't tend to be conservatives, right? They tend to be climate change, tend to be BLM. So my question is, when 10 Nazis get together and they decide that the true form of Nazism is to fuck 10-year-old blonde boys, and they want to advocate to the whole of society that we need to make pedophilia legal for Aryan little boys, and also we need economic fascism, and blacks all need to be killed because they're impure, right? Like just the worst fucking imaginable people ever. Right. So now, do you think that it's fair to you, stuck in your vehicle, right, that you are now one of millions stuck behind a protest of 10 Nazi pedophiles that are getting national attention for all their ideas?
Not fair. It is not fair. If we wanted that to change, we should probably fight for legislation to make laws that go like, hey, we shouldn't block roads because we don't want our roads blocked.
I'm also like, you can call authority, like what they're doing is still illegal. Like the protesting is legal, but what their actions are illegal. You can have them, like, you can go out there and tear gas, and it's like effed up, and now they're like removed and they're arrested, and maybe they'll have charges because of it. And that's
It's not fucked up to tear gas climate protest.
I didn't say it
I'm
was.
just giving them
that,
taste of the future air.
Because I'm saying that they're like, the thing is, we have measures in place for people who like make these tough decisions. If it was just like,
fuck you, that was funny.
If it was on you as a civilian, if you had to figure out like they're not getting the road, like somebody's coming to your window, like it's on you, Scott, baby. Either if they're getting out of the road, you're figuring it out. Like you got the angels on both sides. Like do it, Scott. Like don't do it, Scott. Like, but like
okay,
that's
so
not the world we
so
live
what
in.
you're saying is so what you're saying is you call the police, right? You wait for police to respond. Hopefully they come from a direction that doesn't also have them stuck on the highway.
Well, police can go down the side rails. They can move out the way.
Yeah. But they'll get there eventually, right? However they get there depends upon
Eventually.
prime. You know what I mean?
When you're
Depending
in that
upon you're
coma,
right.
You'll be good.
Oh, they have
Right,
horses.
hopefully you're in a white neighborhood where the response time is a lot better, right? But they'll get there eventually. And so and your argument is that police have a special authority to violently remove protesters from the street that the citizen has no right to, and that the citizen should be stripped from the rights of self-defense and can only be defended by the bastards or piggies, also known as cops, to come out and remove people.
We literally do that.
Why? Why do they have a special authority that the individual doesn't to defend themselves?
This
Why?
is part of our society. We granted them the ability to make these judgment calls.
Oh, come on. You can give a better answer than because we live in a society. Like, don't do the meme.
No, I'm saying like we don't trust citizens to be able to make arrests or like make the proper judgments on these authorities. Like on the
So we don't trust citizens for the right to self-defense?
Things will escalate.
These,
Right?
these
Like-
always go straight back to ANCAP arguments. It's because the state has a legitimacy over violence and an average person doesn't. I want the state to have a monopoly of violence because if violence is shared equally with everybody, people are fucking, as you said earlier, Scott, the people are retarded. I don't want to risk fucking retarded people.
So should we get rid of the right to self-defense? Should it be a law in America that all people are pacifists?
I just don't agree that shooting protesters in the road is self-defense.
What if
Or
they're
running them
kidnapping
over.
you? I'm sorry, obstructing you like in a closet.
Yeah, I don't agree
If
that
this-
being
if there's
obstructed
a
on the
group-
road is self-defense.
If there's a group of
So
Second
I'm
Amendment protesters blocking a road and a car is coming at them slowly, do they have the right to shoot that car, or do they kind of just have to sit there and die if they truly believe in their cause?
You mean a group of people that are aggressing upon other people? Do they have a right to aggress upon them further? No.
Well, I'm just saying,
No,
like
they're in
the
mutual
Second
combat
Amendment
at this
protesters-
point. The
Can they shoot?
protesters got there at the same time the car was coming. we got equal say, baby. We're in mutual combat at this point.
Right, and so long as the protesters move, it's not a problem. But you know what?
Fuck you.
You're
The
going to
car
be
can
hard.
move. Protesters got as much right to be there
They're-
too.
Yeah, sure. That's on a highway is a designated area that.
What if a
that
bunch of protesters
individuals
pull
move
up
in
and
a
break
specific-
their
Oh, who
cars down in
designated
the
it?
road?
The state? Now
Can
we're
they block
fine
the
with
road
the
that
state
way?
making designations on where I can and cannot go. You can't have it both ways, Scott.
Actually, if I wanted to actually go into ANCAP territory, I'm trying to do this so that Prime Cars doesn't have to deal with this shit. What I would say is that the protester actually has a right to homestead the property that's stolen by the state and has every right to be and obstruct your view so long as you have the capacity to turn around, do a U-turn, and go a different way. However, if you are no longer able to go backwards, then the homesteading that they have occurred has actually turned into like a Blockian proviso where they have utilized the homesteading of their property to entrap you. But none of you are
Homestead
smart
the
enough for
highway?
this argument.
Now,
So
let's see,
we're
this is
we're
what
just
you
keeping
did.
it simple.
Scott,
LSP
you think people should be able to homestead highways?
I think
When
it's
those people are
stolen
crossing
property.
the roads on
that-
Jan
that-
6, could you have run them over?
I think it's stolen property and whether or not they're able to homestead the property, I'm kind of like 50-50 on. I would mostly say that like the state has an authority to maintain the order of the road until such a time it could be returned to other people. But it's also hard to argue that the
That just,
intended
undermines your
purpose
entire
of
argument.
the
You know that, right?
yeah
The authority to
difficult
maintain the road until it's turned over to the other people.
yeah LSP, like I understand that like difficult concepts and things like
I know.
that
I'm
have
stupid.
to be picked
You're
apart
smart,
and
yada
things like
yada
that.
yada. Just go and explain the contradiction.
Yeah. So under one circumstance, you could state that you have a right to homestead that property because it's stolen property. I would probably argue from kind of a Hoppian perspective, just like with the immigration situation, that like you don't that property is stolen property by the state, but that property needs to be held in trust and utilized as much to its ability as a private property until such a time that it can be returned to people, because land is divisible and people are owed restitution for the stolen crime.
Okay.
So in terms of the protester in the street, I would say that there is an argument that can be made that from a natural rights perspective that they may have a right to homestead the property.
And
it is debatable. I don't agree with that.
Get any deeper in this? I appreciate Scott's ability. He was honestly doing a great
My
job.
house in the middle of the street.
Yeah, I was trying to keep it away from all of that shit and just talk about like
every
basic
single time.
violence.
You know what? We're being kidnapped in this panel.
Cap anthem.
We don't want to go down this conversation. And Scott pulls us there anyway. It's a kidnapping.
He was trying. No.
Well, no, you called out the specific principles of my philosophy, so I had to explain it to you.
Yeah. Scott was trying.
I kept it away from.
Seen it much worse than this. So shout out to my man Scott. Right? Let's continue down on the argument. Okay. When it. Yeah. This is a question I want to ask. To the Scott and Lactoid, and if anyone else believes is on their side. Do you think there's a difference between a march and like a highway block? Like
yes,
yeah.
I was thinking about this before.
Yes.
Yeah. So
like a march is moving, like they are moving, like. To say that like you have a right to like slam into protesters that are marching, that are moving across the street, that are temporarily blocking it, like you could make the same argument that I get to rear end people as hard as I want and push them off the road because they're doing 5 miles under the speed limit, right? Like, yes, they are obstructing my view, but they're intending to move. They're moving from one place to the other, and they are moving out of the way, albeit not in a way that I would prefer.
Can I clarify?
Stop oil protesters are technically moving though.
What if they're just moving in this, like they're marching, it's a group of people marching in the same direction that you're driving, like you're stuck behind basically like a garbage truck, but like a perpetual one, like so you're
right.
Just like
they're slowing me down by utilizing state property. Eventually we will get to a crossroad section where I can move off to the side. I'm not being kidnapped, right? It's fundamentally different than someone laying in front of my tires and cars behind me, and I can't fucking move myself or my property. See, this is just slowing me down, and it sucks. Okay, so, but like we can move, and then I can eventually go off on the side.
So like if it's on a highway, like, and they just got to wait till the next like off ramp, essentially, right?
Yeah. I mean, like you just wait a couple minutes, and then boom, you're good to go.
That's the thing. It could be quite a while.
It could be 15 miles, depending on where you are.
Yeah.
I mean, like there's circumstances where like it's like where an individual's intentionally like, I'm
literally with the Stop Oil protesters.
It's a group of 5-year-old children,
right? And it's like you're not meaningfully moving out of the fucking way. Like you're just moving in a fucking circle to block me.
Court.
Lactoid, I do.
No shit, you know, I'm not anti-court.
Yeah,
I'm just saying your position isn't actually discussing it.
Yeah, I don't know. This is the issue, right? Because you have the Stop Oil protesters that are technically doing this. This is how they get around it, right? They're moving, but when you watch the videos, they're moving incredibly slowly. I can also imagine scenarios in which, let's say, like you have a bunch of people blocking the road, but then their argument is, well, we're only going to block the road for however long, like a march would take. So technically, we're blocking it for the same amount of time. These are like all problems, and the distinction here is a little bit fuzzy. But I think like what the primary distinction is going to be is, I think for a march, like if you're going to like be using a public road for a march, you should not be able to use like roads that are like critically like arterial roads that are like critical for movement. And so you should only be able to use roads in which there are opportunities for detours. And you should have to give the city notice in advance for them to like clearly delineate and mark those detours to allow people to move around the march, right? There needs to be some planning. I'm not in favor of people just all of a sudden spontaneously like creating a march and blocking traffic. right? You
Wait
need
a minute. So you're saying that you're okay with the protest as long as it doesn't inconvenience anyone at all, and then like you can avoid
no,
it.
it's a march, but you have to like again, kind of like along the lines of what Scott was saying in terms of like give the people have an opportunity to like turn around so they're not like stuck. Like in this case, you would give like the city an opportunity of like, okay, your march can go along this path because there's like these roads here that people can like detour around, so they're not trapped, right? They're not trapped behind the march.
I'm not saying you have to be trapped, but like it's kind of like you're trying to take as much power away from what the protest purpose.
No,
Protest is
I'm saying for
supposed to-
any march, And so this
If
is
the
a
protest
great
purpose
example
is
of
to
this.
harm other people, to bully them into changing political directives and policy, then go fuck yourself.
Well, so
that's
here,
kinda what
let me
protest
give you an
means in a weird
example.
definition. Yeah, sure.
Here's an example, and for some reason, it's a famous case. The name is I'm blanking on the name. Some of you might remember it. But there's a famous Supreme Court case in which they ruled that the Klan has the right to the right to march. Right,
Mhm.
the neo-Nazis have a right to organize and have a march. I agree that they should be able to like submit an application to the city. Okay, we want to do a march, and then the city like, okay, where do you want to march? Like here's like the acceptable marching roads because they're not arterial roads that are critical for like movement. And then like they pick the one that they want to march on, and then they can march in it. That's great. What I'm not in favor of is like the Klan members getting together and then like doing a slow march around like a black neighborhood so the food trucks can't come in. Right? That's a problem. But like I am okay with them like getting their message out. But if the focus isn't a message but disruption of movement, the entire intent is different. The entire effect is different. All the peripherals are different, right? There's just so many different elements here.
Yeah, but I feel like it sounds good in this example, but I feel like in practice, if this play out, like if the urban liberal cities, like the conservatives are trying to do a march against the vaxxer, I don't know, insert thing here, like you conservatives care about, and like the city's only allowing you to do it in this like back road thing with a population of 7. Like actually, this is the places you're legally allowed to be at. I feel like we would reasonably get back to a argument of like, okay, like the town square should be accessible to anyone. Like
it's fundamentally different. It's fundamentally different to say that there are free speech zones and everywhere else you're not allowed to protest versus whether or not you're allowed to obstruct or kidnap or whatever fucking phrase you want to use other people, which is aggressing upon other people's right to live freely and utilize services and go to work and do other things, right?
I'm
like,
saying like if we go
there's
past
a difference.
the road, like outside the road, I'm saying that like if we should they be able to, should the city be able to tell you can't go to like let's say it's a shopping district. Let's say this is like a walkable area, but like a place that
fuck that. They're just going to protect rich areas. No, fuck that.
Inconvenience people. Like what we're doing is like this is really going to inconvenience a lot of people. Like that's where our goal is. Like it should the city be able to say no, you can't do that.
It's not my goal. My goal is to privatize all property and then fuck you if you're on my property. But
okay. So Lactoid, I want to ask a question there.
Yeah.
When it comes to the lunch counter protests they had like in the 50s, 60s, right? Where like they were disrupting a service and a private business, no less. Oh no. Do you think that's a problem? That they shouldn't have done that?
Yeah, if people are going into like a lunch, like a business or really any kind of diner, and they're like physically blocking people from getting to the service, and especially the owners are like, get out, and they're not leaving. Yeah, that's trespassing. It's a major issue.
They were okay, yeah. So when they were just sitting at the lunch counter, right? They weren't blocking the entrance, as far as I know.
Oh, are you talking about during the civil rights movement?
Yeah, during the civil rights movement. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So like you're saying that like it was bad. That was like an inappropriate use of their First Amendment rights to protest those racist lunch counters by sitting there because they.
You know how I feel about private businesses, right?
A God-fearing white man from.
But no, it's a private. Again, it's a private business. This is like fundamentally different than like blocking arterial roads that are leading that are critical for hospital services.
But you're still saying that
the same economic argument.
Could I give you something more comparable? What if
I'm not using
what if a bunch of black people during the civil rights era just stood in front of like whites only water fountains and they blocked those water fountains? Should they be allowed to do that?
I
don't think blocking water fountains is a good idea. No, like even if you think that racism is a problem, like what if somebody's like has heat stroke and needs water?
What if they can just go to the
I know that a lot of the buses were like private.
Yeah,
at the time.
FK,
What if
what
you
if
sat?
people
What
like
if you sat in
Heathrow?
front of like a public like funded bus system? Like what if like all black people got on and sat in the front of the bus? And
You're thinking of the Birmingham?
Yeah, no, I know, I don't, no, no,
that-
I
those
know,
are
no,
private.
no. This is different. Hold on, this is different. Okay,
This
if
is
they
so
were
weird.
if they were standing in front of the buses and blocking the buses,
No, not standing in front
I
of
would
them.
have a problem with that, right? But what was happening is they were boycotting the buses. They weren't going on the
No,
buses.
he's not
I'm
asking
asking you a
that.
different question. I'm saying because
Right.
the Birmingham bus boycott, like that was a private business. I'm asking you if there was a publicly funded, like the city's bus company, and the black people got on the bus and they sat in the white section. They sat in the front of the bus. Do you think that like they
Well,
could?
wait. So
why
if it's
would we have a problem with that? I don't understand.
Well,
Why
no,
would we have a
it-
problem with that?
if it's a public, hold on, if it's a public bus section, then I would just like assert like because of the fact it's public and all the money to fund those seats are stolen anyway, anybody has equal right to sit there.
I mean,
So,
I
so they're
do
just
wanna
sitting in a
test-
seat. They're not blocking somebody else from sitting in a like an open seat, are they?
Well, can I take Prime's
they're
earlier
not-
example with the?
am saying it's
I'm
not
sorry.
legal. I'm saying they
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
have a
you-
legal
you
right
got-
to these seats.
Yeah,
I wanna
guess
take
I
Prime's
wouldn't agree with the law there.
I'm curious on Scott because you made an argument that you can use violence to resolve economic harm being done by protesters, right? Protesters are in front of me, and really it's me defending myself because the economic harm they inflict on me by not allowing me to go to do whatever it is I need to do, yada yada yada, right? Would you accept?
Not that's not my reasoning, but same in conclusion. Show fine.
Also, lactoid for your heat stroke
Well,
question.
I
I
don't
can see
want to
the
straw
same
man you,
argument.
like, what-
In an
Hold on, I was gonna say,
emergency,
we got
it
too
could go
much
to court.
questions.
It's my-
Let LSP go. Then I want to
Sure.
get to Blake.
Well, I just want to
Yeah,
ask if you'd
you
apply the
just-
same
you
logic
don't get
to the
to-
lunch counter protests.
You don't get to stop my persons or property from moving,
Right.
and refuse.
I
to get
own a
away.
lunch counter.
I don't
but the
care.
Black people
I
are
don't
sitting
care
there.
about like the economic activity or anything. It's just about private property.
You made
I
that
have
argument
private
like
property.
50
Lunch counter is
times
private
about the
property,
economic
right? I
activity.
own a lunch counter. A bunch of protesters come in. They're like, "Hey, you don't serve black people." I'm like, "Get out! It's my property." Right?
Yeah.
Should I be allowed to use
Get the
lethal
fuck
force on
out.
them? Okay, they don't. Should I be
Lethal?
allowed to use lethal force on them?
You have to use a gentleness principle, just the same way you would with the
If-
other people, which is,
If
hey,
you're
get
pushing
out.
them out,
They
and
refuse
they
to get
don't
out, and go, hey, yeah, then fuck them up. Get out of my
Well, I mean,
restaurant.
But everybody agrees with that. To some
Maybe
degree.
throw in a
Like,
few N words and like
there's a-
crack a
there's
whip
a-
while we're at it.
No, but
Like, what
but
the
you
fuck
do.
is this
There-
example?
No matter
Like, you know what I mean?
Like anything someone like people can't refuse to do things like as part of like being in society. Everything eventually goes up to like a threat of violence. Like,
your argument is
there's a-
just reasonable. All night, you just keep talking about we live in a society. That's not a fucking.
Well, no. What
argument.
he's asking is,
Like-
are you allowed to like if somebody's sitting in a restaurant, you might be able to beat the shit out of them. You might be able to call the cops to get them kicked out. You could do all of this, but if the only thing they're doing is just sitting there and being dead weight, are
I'm
you
saying
allowed
when
to
you
just
call
pull
the
out a
cops-
gun and like shoot them?
I mean, when you call the cops,
So-
you're basically agreeing that like if the cops like you
When-
want him removed up until killing him eventually.
So John Locke solved this, right? In Second Treatise of Government, right? In his response to the
John
Bible.
Locke.
Right? So it's really simple. When a thief comes and breaks into your home in the middle of the night, right? The thief can be unarmed, but you're perfectly justified in shooting that thief, despite the fact that they're unarmed and they do not intend to actually harm or kill you. They just intend to steal your TV or something, right? And the reason for that is that they have initiated a state of war.
That's not what we're.
I'm in the middle of the
talking
night.
about.
No shit, Sherlock. I'll
He's not
connect the
stealing.
dots. for you.
It's just sitting there.
Yeah. Go ahead. Finish
So,
the point, and then
right,
I'm going to
they
go to
have
Corey.
put
He's
them-
the next person to
They
talk.
have put themselves. So the thief has put themselves in a state of war. They have proven that they do not give a fuck about my property. That they're willing to harm or do something on my property, and like I have every right to fight back against that person. If a person comes into my restaurant and swarms a counter and refuses to leave, and if I attempt to force them to leave, they fight back and shake back and try and hijack my property again, then I have every right to escalate that violence further and further until either they get the fuck out or they're dead.
So we're going to go to Corey next. I just find it interesting that Scott used the word swarm when talking about black people. But go ahead, Corey.
Just a hopefully quick question to Lactoid, where like I try to
I
understand.
mean, I
like,
could
where
have
your
said a
limits lie.
pack.
Yeah, but where your limits lie. As FK brought up earlier with the trucker example, the Canadian trucker example, and like one of the issues was obviously trucks obstruct stuff and traffic, and I understand there's a lot of conversation about blocking services and understandable issues there. I'm curious how it extends to just like noise, as in part of the trucker movement was like noise, and that was so like do you have an unlimited capacity to generate as much noise, but you're not denying any services?
That's a good question. Like if it's causing like injury, obviously, I think at that point you.
Well, yeah, not like
immediate.
1,000 decibels, but like
right.
if
But if
just,
it's like constant, if it's like you're constantly like destroying everyone else's like peaceful life, I don't know. Like I don't know what the threshold would be, because I can imagine a scenario where it's like, yeah, if I put it like rig up like subwoofers on like my property, I'm just constantly playing
John
them over
Cusack
and over
say
again.
anything with a boombox. Just
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that'd be a problem.
Have y'all seen Lovecraft? I'm sure Prom has. Oh, anyway, is I don't know. It's like so. But
Lovecraft Country.
yeah. Do you remember the episode like whenever they first bought into the house and like all the white people on the block basically pulled up and set off their car alarms, and like locked the doors and just kind of walked off, and the police weren't doing anything. That's kind of the
They
situation.
were peacefully protesting, Bam, right?
Yeah, I think what
you couldn't attack the people because of it, but eventually one of the girls did end up like throwing a brick in their window and like cutting off the car. After,
so
like,
I think what you've highlighted, I think what you've highlighted is an issue that is kind of a contradiction because of the existence of the state, right? Which is to say that the state, like, no one really has fully private property. They just kind of have, they just kind of have like pseudo private property that they pay taxes on. The state like affords them some of, but not all of their rights. And so because of that, there's a legal framework of like noise ordinances that are kind of like arbitrarily pushed upon people. People may have voted on them in some capacity, right? But like it's not a private property or neighborhood thing. And so like I think it is kind of like a complicated scenario in that situation, because the neighborhood individuals, the private property owners, right, they haven't had the capacity to create their own noise ordinance laws, and the state has done it for them. And so it's like, are those noise ordinance laws legitimate? It's hard to say. I would say that after it's kind of a continuum problem, like a lot of things have been here, like throughout this night, that people have been addressing continuum problems. Like, when is a protester actually moving out of the way or pretending to move out of the way? And also like, when is like something so loud that it becomes violent and aggressive versus just being loud? And what's the length of time, right? So I do think that there is some level of that. But the other problem with the truckers' protest is that it's collective noise, right? So you would need to prove that an individual was honking their horn in such a degree that it became aggressive, not as part of a collective. So like, I think you actually ask an extremely interesting question that is like difficult to define because of kind of the contradictions of the state. I appreciate that question. I don't know the answer to it.
I don't know either. That's why
I got another test for LSP. Let's say
there's
you have
like two other people here, dog.
No, this is for you because
now he's no longer bringing it on.
I'm on a W. I'm on a W track, so I just want to keep that going. Let's say you have like a bunch of white supremacists that are like blocking food trucks from
white supremacist pedophiles. Don't forget, white supremacist pedophiles.
Yes, that are
blocking.
So a
bunch of Catholics
that are blocking like food delivery trucks from delivering food into black neighborhoods. Okay, and the police aren't doing anything about it. Right, racist police aren't doing anything about it. How long do the white supremacists get to block the food trucks before the food trucks get to run them over?
I don't know. I don't know that I'd put a day on it.
But you would say
pro food desert in black communities.
Eventually, yeah. But I'd have to really like think about on when it like it's like Scott pointed out earlier. It's kind of a continuum problem. I feel like at some point, like when you're starving out black communities and the police aren't doing anything about it, yeah, like you graduate to using force to get the resources you need. That makes sense to me.
Right. So this is kind of an answer to the closet question I asked you before. So is it reasonable to assert that like your, I guess, barometer for when is a sufficiently long amount of time until like this is just stupid is like maybe just greater than Scott, but you both kind of agree on the principle of at some point you get to run over protesters?
No, because Scott seems to take that as a first solution to this problem, and I look to the state as a way of mediating this as a solution to this problem. So if I'm locked in the closet,
you just give someone else the authority to run over protesters.
Yeah, I would rather have somebody else. Well, I wouldn't rather have them run over protesters. I'd rather have the authority to detain or arrest protesters. Visit violence upon them like that. Right.
You believe that people have a right to violently detain and forcibly remove protesters from the street. You just believe that the people affected by it don't have the right to do that. It must be done
Yes.
by individuals given state
Yes.
power that have a monopoly that are like
Yes.
proven over and over and over again to be horrible.
Yes.
at this.
I mean, yeah, they're horrible, sure.
But,
I mean,
but hold on,
better
but this is
leaders,
important.
yes.
This is important though. In the scenario in which the police are not responding to people blocking your car, you would agree that at some point you get to run them over.
I mean, we're no longer dealing with a state anymore.
I
It's not
want him
like
to
we
answer
can
this.
talk
I want him to
resources.
answer
Yeah, let
this.
me answer it.
I'd have to think about that. I guess it would really be like circumstantial. It would really depend on like what is it I need to move for, and does
You're
it
on a deserted
justify-
island, and
Yeah,
there's
yeah,
a
No,
fucking
no,
desert.
no.
There's a coconut on the other
no,
side. You gotta
not
get that
desert island.
coconut.
Not deserted island, right? This is a very realistic scenario. Okay, you're stuck behind like.
Well, if
protesters
it's
who
just
are
like a
blocking
matter
the
of
road.
it's hard to answer like without like any more specifics. Like if it's just a matter of me being inconvenienced, the answer would be no. But if it's like, okay, well now you're actually like obstructing me from doing something that I need to survive or to provide for other people who live with me that need, for my family or something that they need to survive, then it's graduated in level of force level necessary because the police aren't responding. Like,
Great.
yeah,
No,
now
hold
I
on.
can.
Okay, let me just narrow it again.
Sure.
Well, that's
Now,
every road.
Let's say you're on your way to work.
Every car.
Let's say you're on your way to work and you pull up to a BLM protest and they're blocking your car. You are on your way to
Okay.
work to make money for your family so that your family can live. And the BLM protesters are blocking your car. If the police are not responding, you would agree that you should be able to run over the protesters to get to work, just to feed your family.
No, because I don't think my family would starve off of missing a single day of work.
Let's say that you would lose your job. Okay, let's
I
say
got
you would lose
a
your job
good
and then you would.
example. On that note, I got an example for you. There was during a BLM protest, they were blocking the street, right? And some guy, I'm not sure if he plowed through necessarily, but like he pushed his way through, and some people got injured or whatever, right? And they eventually gets arrested, but he's like, "Well, I had to get to work. I'm on probation, right? And because of that, like if I'm not at work
Right.
at a certain time, then I go back to
Yeah.
jail, and then my family loses out on the money and all that."
So then you get to run over protesters, right, LSP?
I don't know. Maybe I'd have to think about it.
Just say
Honestly.
yes. I'm trying
I
to get a
can't
yes
just
from you
say-
so fucking
I
bad.
can't just
I'm
say
like
yes.
narrowing
You're
in
asking, like, some
every
actual
fucking
good-
objection.
Lactoid, you're actually asking good questions. I would actually have to think about it. That's the best answer I can give you.
I know. My God. It's not the
Lactoid,
best
I-
answer you can give me.
I'm gonna give you a question there because I want to expand on what Bam said previously. Okay.
I'm gonna start doing this back to you, buddy.
Well, I mean,
Yes.
but the thing is that if you can't answer it, right, then it shows that you understand there's an inherent aggression from the protesters against you at a certain point.
Yeah, but I think that
You're only- but you're okay.
Okay.
Right. You think it's okay to attack people and not be able to defend yourself so long as it's not that bad. Which makes you pro-evil, pro-aggression, pro-violence.
What if a
Lack-
baby punched you in the leg, Scott? Can you kick it in the face?
Well,
Weird.
they have a guard.
Kill it!
Or are you pro
The
evil?
baby's gonna learn today, motherfucker.
on a position.
Lactoid.
The baby's gonna learn.
Yeah.
Lactoid. I want to expand on what our friend Bam said previously. Okay, so you've already established that when you're using a publicly funded service and being blocked from using that publicly funded service, you can use violence, or that protester apparently is not legitimate, right? And I just kind of want to push you on this. So our friend Bam talked about a public bus, and there's a whites only section in front. And there's a blacks only section in back. And you said, well,
I've always wanted to sit in the back of the bus, baby. Let me tell you.
You said if black people protest that state of affair and sit in the white seats, the white people can use the other open seats,
Yeah.
right? But that's assuming that the seats are equal. And that's not the case when we segregate things by race. So let's just say that in the white section, the seats vibrate. They're self-warming. There's a mister.
Oh, thank God. I thought you were about to say that the white people take care of their seats and the black people don't.
Oh my God! Yeah,
I was about to be like,
Oh,
God damn. All right, man.
Of course you thought that, Scott. And then, And then in the black,
Oh, fuck.
section, in the black section in the back, right? Like there's like springs popping up from the cushions, and like in the summer, like they automatically have like a heat lamp that's directed at the black people, and in the winter, it's blowing cold air straight in your
Like
face,
standing
right?
room only, and you're like a 9.
Yo, they're just trying to make them comfortable, man. Trying to get that vitamin D. Y'all need more sun than we do, all right?
Get there, Prime.
You know, you got to get that vitamin D, man.
So our white friends, you, right, a God-fearing white man, is being blocked from the
I don't
services
fear
that
God.
he deserves, you being white, in the front of the bus, right? And since you're being denied those services, that makes that protest invalid, right?
No, I don't think that they're blocking me from the services. I think that they're just simply
You're not
using
getting the
no, they're-
vibrating seat.
right, but they're using the services that are like meant like in the way they're meant to be used for the benefit of the public, right? It'd be like if there's a
No,
black
no, no,
person.
not for the
No,
white
this would be the
public.
comparison. This would be the comparison. If like let's say there's like a black person driving in front of me, and then I'm driving behind them, and I'm like, who is this black person on my road? And then I run them off the road, right? This is different. They're just using the road. They're just on the road with their car. They're doing what the road was meant to be,
See,
meant to be done.
this
with.
is why-
Which is
No, no, no.
driving.
I got
on
you,
it.
prom
Right,
guys.
right.
I got you, prom guys. And I also promise that whatever fucking quick-witted insult comes my way, that I won't respond so long as it is actually a quick-witted insult. Yeah, this is why you need to bring in logic, also known as ANCAP philosophy, into the situation, because that's where when you have that stolen property and a person is utilizing that property as it is intended to be used, both arguments of the individual homesteading and the idea of individuals using it as its intended purpose as a private property owner would apply to the idea that if you just sit in the seat, that like you're kind of homesteading that as your seat, and that the racial discrimination done by the state is a problem in and of itself, and it doesn't actually apply here. So like you don't get to forthrightly then put out the racial distinction there, because you would utilize it as one could to its purposes, not necessarily to a racist institution's philosophy of racial superiority.
What if you hop on the
And
bus?
I-
What if you hop on the bus and it's like it's not just you. You're with your like sickly old grandma, and like she can't stand. You got to get to the doctor to get dialysis or whatever she needs. Like, and she can't stand. And there sits Rosa Park in the white only section, in the elderly white only seat. It's got your grandma's name right over it. And you're not even racist. You're like, hey, Mrs. Parks, can grandma use that seat? And she throws 2 big ones at you.
Get on your hands and knees and let your grandma sit on you.
I don't like this is silly. I'm not gonna move Rosa Parks out of the seat. I don't care.
Hey,
First of all, Rosa
grandma
Parks is
needs
dead.
dialysis.
Second of all, she's not even a big deal. It's just the one the NAACP chose. Like it's not even like fucking. Like she's not even the one that like actually did it. She was just the one that they thought would be palatable to the white.
Lactoid.
She is a
like-
hero.
Lactoid.
Right?
Like,
I don't.
I want to be.
Yeah, she sat there
clear.
first.
I acknowledge a lot of the stuff that Scott said. But like, I want to be clear. Like the intentions of that bus, right? What it was intended for, the front seats were intended for supple white
For whites.
butts, okay? And like if
Supple white butts. We're talking
supple-
only pogs are allowed.
yeah, oh yeah,
Most
Well,
white people are
I
not
ran the
allowed.
buses. That's what they would be.
Pogs in the front seat, blacks in the back. All right, I'm trying to have the hotties behind me, and all the rest of the white people. You can't get on this bus. It's a silly analogy. You know it is.
That intention is like facially unjust, right? The intention when you're taking public money, it's all stolen money to begin with, and the fact that you'd steal money from black people to buy a service that they can't access just because of the color of their skin is just it's wrong, right? It's just like on its face. You don't steal money from people and then discriminate against them when
So
you're building a service.
Exploit it.
You're using their money on.
Discrimination is so. I want to
The
be
depth
clear.
is wrong. It
Maybe
doesn't
I
matter.
didn't understand this before, but I want to be clear. You think discrimination is wrong when it's done by the state, but it's
Yes.
fine when it's okay.
Correct.
So like the exact same discrimination. So all right. So
But a private bus, yes, totally fine. Yeah.
So what if it's your
Private
grandma's?
bus. Only
just
the
Hold on,
right
pause.
now on a private
Yes.
bus?
Taxes.
The
Hold on.
private bus
Taxes.
driver gets to kick them off. Sorry.
Now Prime's all
Taxes-
on favor of the ANCAP. Give me that private bus with
Look,
the seating.
taxes-
that you want.
You can make a
Anything-
private bus. with just white women.
Anything. Let us be clear. Anything the state does is wrong, no matter how good its consequences or outcomes may be, because it's all done and funded by stolen money, right? But when you add discrimination with that, right, then you are taking and stealing, and then you are putting it towards preferable outcomes. It's really no different, right? So if the state says no blacks allowed, it's exactly the same moral evil as we're going to give old people Social Security. There's no difference in evil between establishing Social Security for the elderly or the state going to every single place and saying no blacks allowed. These are both equally evil because it is theft of people's property and then redistribution of property to other people. Now, the difference is when you actually impose additional restrictions on negative rights. These are further abuses beyond just the taxation. So if you impose some form of negative rights violation and you happen to do it on a racial category, then that is wrong and racist. But it's wrong because it's a negative rights violation, not because it's racist. Now, we can get into just like our own personal philosophy. Fuck racists. Like, I don't like them, but I love racist jokes. So I kind of hope there's always a couple of them because they keep racist jokes funny.
I just want to say I'm actually not in favor of the. I just before you do that, like before moving past, I just want to say like I'm actually not that big in favor of the bus boycotts. Like instead of worrying about sitting in the front, like I feel like more black people should just like bought into like black bus companies. But that's a different situation.
100%. Yes,
fair enough. I have one before we end. I have one quick test. I'll
but
ask FK this.
Hold on, pause. I actually have to defend the civil rights movement. They tried doing that, but like there was a lot of fucking legal fuckery that happened from black businesses in terms of like whether or not they're allowed to cross county lines and state lines, and so it was actually really, really difficult for black buses to be able to do. Yeah, I just want to throw that out there to like they did try that to some capacity, and it kind of didn't work.
Okay, one more test. This comes actually. I'll ask it to anybody, basically except for Scott. Do you blocking roads? One thing. Do you think like let's say BLM protesters like found like a power transformer and like hooked up an alternator to it and shut off the electricity for like an entire neighborhood as a protest? Do you think that like people should come be able to like attack the people who have like the alternator on their electricity?
Yeah. In like attack. Well, I don't know how they're going to identify who did.
No, like the protesters are all like standing around.
It was a black male aged 18 to 25 in basketball shorts and a wife beater. Go out. Go.
The point of the question is, you guys can be okay.
I'm kidding.
Like people blocking roads. What about people blocking electricity? What about people cutting off electricity to an entire neighborhood? Like you're cutting off a service to a neighborhood. Do you think that like that would warrant people like using violence to stop?
I don't think it justifies violence personally, but that's just
I don't think it should lead to violence. I think what would realistically and would be the best option is those people get arrested and then it goes through the court system and then there's a question on are you allowed to protest in that manner, and that just gets decided on.
Okay, but if the cops don't respond within like a day, can I go and like beat up the people who are like blocking my like internet? Come on, it's my internet.
I mean, like, I feel like your best bet, no bullshit, right?
You know,
that everybody can agree to.
Bullets, like, yeah, just go
like,
kill them.
Right, like what you ought to do, like,
where you're
hold on. Yeah, you're on our side now, right? Which means that you understand that it's aggressive. You just want the state.
You slowly whittle down.
Real bad, real bad at dealing with protests. Historically, cops not real good with protesters. But anyways, nevertheless, yeah, you would just protect the electrician that's there to fix it. And if they try and impede him, then, pop a cap.
Yeah. So someone I don't think they're gonna I don't think they'll be able to hear this. But someone asked a question. And it was in only Mr. Well, hold on, I gotta wait like a few seconds for the ads to break. God damn it. So they can actually
you can't read your own super chat.
Yeah, oh, they're not a sub. You should be a sub to the channel. Shout out to people who are subs. Most of you are gift subs, but like shout out to people who are subs. But anyway, let's So a person in chat, only Mr. Bill, asked, can we get a raise of hands for those people who are on the panel that have been to an IRL protest? How hot did the protest get? My guess is maybe one person. How hot did the protest get? I mean, I've been to IRL protests. So.
I mean, the local protests, like where I live now, like, well, yeah, the local protests are like in a little bitty town, so they're like super nothing burgers. But I ended up going to Atlanta the night they were rushing CNN, and that night was wild, boy. Like, I'm talking about everywhere. Like, they were rushing Linux, they were rushing CNN. Oh my goodness.
Yo,
it
I'm
was
old.
hilarious.
I'm old. My first protest experiences were all Occupy Wall Street.
It's crazy. Like, I pulled up for the,
man,
like,
you're
not even a
super fucking
protest. I
old.
pulled up for the nonsense.
I only protested when I was a leftist. After I like moved away from that, I stopped protesting.
Because you don't believe they're
I
legitimate.
protest a lot more.
He doesn't
been
want
to-
to get
protest a
run
lot more as a
over.
lefty.
I've been to some events.
I never blocked
in,
the
like,
street.
Texas,
I can
but
say that distinctly. I never blocked
Yeah.
the street.
I've been to some events in Texas. I think blocking the street, like on a personal level, it just feels like I'm just wasting my time.
I went to
Yeah.
abortion protest to pick up chicks.
We shall not be moved.
I saw that.
Wait,
Sunny
actually
episode.
though, hold on. Actually,
Right.
Is that bad? Do you think it's bad to go
Oh.
to like protests like that or like abortion rallies just to pick up girls?
Why would it be bad? Like 90% of the people, 90% of the girls there don't give a fuck about the issues. They don't care about
What
it.
if you're
No,
pretending to be like
They just want-
pro-life?
They just want Instagram
ETF.
pictures that they like can virtue signal about. Like
What
you
if
might
you're
as well go
pretending to
get
be
some pussy
pro-life?
while you're there.
hold up a sign,
Huh?
shout a catchphrase.
What if you're pretending to be pro-life?
I don't care what you're pretending.
That's
to be, as long
risky.
as,
That's
like,
risky.
They'll sniff it out. They know.
I'm just saying most of those girls don't give a fuck. And the same thing with the dudes. Most of the people at protest events are not there because they care about issues. It's the same thing with all the BLM protests, right? Like you have a couple of fucking like you have a couple of people that like genuinely believe in the protest, and then you go to Richmond City during the protest, and what did you have? White Antifa burning down black businesses in my fucking in my hometown. What the fuck is that BLM? Is that really Black Lives Matter? Is that a passion for the black community being better? Burning it down with a bunch of out of town white kids? Like, no, most of these people are just here to virtue signal and get photos.
So true, King.
You get some pussy on top of that, fuck it.
That
okay.
protest pussy hit different.
Although, to be honest with you, though,
Yeah, it's
actually,
angry.
I do
That's why.
think it's like actually somewhat unethical.
It's
Because
angry.
It's somewhat
That's
unethical
good.
because
Nobody else
you're
appreciated that.
committing fraud, right? You're tricking these women into thinking that you're on their side when you're not.
That's a good point. That's a good point. We wouldn't want to commit fraud.
Just like Google has to be transparent at an individual level, you should be transparent as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, it's only fraud if you're selling the penis. Like if you're an escort and you're claiming to have these opinions, and therefore you're trying to get her to purchase your services. But if you're not actually giving anything other than the penis, right? Like, is it fraud still?
No, I
They're
think
not
so. I think-
purchasing a product.
No, but they're being involved. They're being involved in like an activity. And I think when you like fraud,
Is every white lie? Is every misrepresentation and white lie a fraud?
I
Fraud?
start every first
Yes.
date
No
with
such
like,
thing
all
as
my
lies.
hottest takes.
Hey, I'm just saying it becomes a
Is it bad
continuum
to cheat on
problem
a girl
again,
and she never
right?
finds out?
Let me
Let's be
tell
real.
you the thing about racial covenants. So they're not always. I always start every single time. I sit down. I just like.
And, and he's like, and you think that's fun, and you haven't run away yet. I think I'll love my take on necrophilia.
I'm just saying.
And this is
Alright.
all,
Right, I'm just saying that there's
I will love you
there's
forever.
another continuum here, right? Like there is an issue of like is it fraud if you tell your wife that she doesn't look fat in that dress to keep the relationship healthy? Are you selling her a lie?
Here's
You know what I mean? Like, are you belief
It's
in
fraud.
radical honesty?
It's fraud. It's fraud if you should know, or if you have reason to believe that this other person would not engage with the activity or would not purchase the service from you, absent this information. And I think a lot of women, like if you misrepresent your political views to them and you say like, yeah, like I actually am all down with Bernie when you're not, I think a lot of like Bernie Sanders supporting women would not get with you if you voted for Trump. And so I think there is a problem if you misrepresent your voting history to beat somebody.
The problem with that, the problem with that is it's kind of an impossible standard. Like, I mean, like we can talk about it theoretically, but it's not anything anybody could judge from the outside. Like you could talk about it hypothetically, but until we have like Minority Report brain reading things, like we don't really know people's motivations.
Well, no, this
we
is
don't
the
know
case
what
with
they
all
know
lying.
is and isn't.
Right. But this is the case with all lying, right? In the same way, like if I, I guess the horrible example I can think of is like,
but your lie is not predicated upon the lie. Your lie is predicated upon an intentional belief that the other person wouldn't have acted differently if not for the lie.
a reasonable belief, right? So like one of the examples I can think of, and this is like perhaps horrific, but like one of the examples I can think of would be like, if you stealth somebody, but like nothing bad winds up happening, like did you commit some kind of rape? Well, kind of, because you completely misrepresented the terms of the engagement that you were like getting involved with in a way that, maybe she would have been comfortable with unprotected sex, but that wasn't the understanding. And there's like a reasonable person would expect that somebody might not be comfortable or somebody would not be comfortable with unprotected sex.
I mean, if you didn't,
I see it the same way with like
stealthing's different because like if you didn't discuss contraception and you just use, like physical consent signs moving from phase to phase to phase, right? And you just put it in raw, but there's like a million things that led up to that, then that's not really fraud. Now,
no, I wouldn't call that fraud. But if you
but if you put on a condom.
Well, right. If you pretended to put a condom on, just in the same way, if you pretended to rally for Bernie Sanders.
I feel bad. Bam was trying to dip out. But I mean, like, I don't know.
An argument about whether or not condoms violate the non-aggression principle.
Dude, do not fucking put lactoid in the ANCAP.
Do condoms violate the NAP is wild.
I'm not saying condoms violate the NAP.
No, somebody just said
it's all right. LSP is, but he's just been memeing all night. He's just
here with my.
I'm just saying, honesty. You should always honestly represent yourself to sexual partners. This is why I never lie about my height. I never lie about my dick size. I never lie about anything. Like I just sit down and I'm an open.
How big is your dick?
Yeah, but me and you ain't got to lie about that, lactoid.
Unless you're fucking me, I'm not telling you. Sorry.
Well, hold on. I'm a member of the state, right? I'm part of my local government, right? And I'm stealing from you, so I'm pretty sure I'm fucking you. So I think I have a right to this information. But okay, I thought this was like a lot of fun. This turned out to be a really good conversation. Thanks everyone, and Bam who had to leave.